It's time to get your checking account to zero with free checking from PenFed. That's zero ATM fees, zero balance requirements, and zero time spent waiting for your paycheck to direct deposit because you can receive it up to 2 days early. Open your account with just $25 and see how big zero can be. Apply online today at PenFed.org/free checking. Early direct deposit eligibility may vary between pay periods and timing of payers' funding. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
Kurt Johnson, welcome back to the podcast. This is the second time or third time?
Second time. Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Talked Striper last time, but that's we got. You have a report from the Truckee, and then I have a report from the North Tongue River.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You know, it's. I think I'm a little bit spoiled, or we're a little bit spoiled, because if you go to the Fly Shop's website, you get flows and you get all kinds of information about what's fishing and how it's fishing. You don't have that in Wyoming, it doesn't seem like. You have to like go to the shop to see about the flows and see about the flies and everything like that. I haven't found a website or even much information at all about that. So I feel kind of weird sharing information about the tongue, because is it like a collective effort to keep it quiet, or is there just not information out there?
Ooh, it's pretty deep. So what's your game plan going into the fly shop? You know, buy a couple things.
Well, we didn't go to any fly shops. Last year we went up to a fly shop in Sheridan and asked about the Tongue River. And there's the Tongue River, there's the South Tongue and the North Tongue. So we just went to the Tongue River, which we figured once everything collects, it was a bigger piece of water. But it was back in this canyon, and we only caught, I don't know if I think it was whitefish, and then a couple browns, and that was it. I'm like, dude, this is not at all. And sometimes that canyon fishing, there's a lot of recreation. People are hiking around, and so you feel like you don't want to camp back there. Sometimes it kind of had like a Camp 9 feel. You know, when you get back to Camp 9 vibe, like, what goes on back here? Not as sketchy as Camp 9 in California, but you drive way back there, and there's no way out. It's at the back of this canyon. The river comes in. It's kind of nice, but you know what's going on back here.
Yeah.
So we went there and weren't catching what we wanted to. We'd heard that there was some cutthroats and weren't getting them. So we drove back out around and then fished the North Tongue, and that was the meadowy, winding back and forth, beautiful, just awesome, and caught some cutthroats last year. So we didn't even go to a fly shop this year; just went straight up there, and dude, it was tough fishing.
What were the conditions like?
The water was totally clear. Water wasn't high. It just kind of meandered back and forth as it does. Just beautiful. And so I wanted to fish hoppers because I figured this would be just sweet.
Oh, absolutely.
And there was no hoppers. As we were walking through the grass, no hoppers at all. I fished one anyway. Just because there's got to be a fish. Is it Hank Patterson that talks about, you're going to eat a birthday cake whether or not it's your birthday or not?
Right.
I just figured, why not? And I dropped a little chronomid off one of the ice cream cone guys. White bead with black body and then the red wire ribbing.
Yeah.
And there were a couple fish that just came up to it and just looked and then no. And I was trying to do everything right, like on my knees, right, and making the right cast, and you're just not trying to spook anything. And man, just refusals. I went to a foam caddis, something a little bit smaller, and then the bugs, like anything that was hatching, was just tiny, and I'm not really good at identifying a lot of that stuff. And so I did the smallest flies I could, and then I had when I was fishing the frying pan last summer, I hooked into someone else's rig that had gotten broken off. And I pulled up, and there were these two tiny little nymphs on top of – there was a 3-nymph rig. And so I still had those in there. So I used one. One was at least a size 20.
Okay.
It was just black thread, a golden bead head, and that was it. So I tied that on, nothing. I was just going smaller, nothing.
Wow.
Abby was getting nothing. RS2s, zebra midge. You did the zebra midge, and that's my guy. Zebra
That's the
midge
go-to, yeah.
Off of rubber legs is my guy. Tried the rubber legs, nothing. It ended up being a size 14 bird's nest.
Really?
And I got 3 in the same pool, just boom, 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 right as we were about ready to leave. I'm like, what the heck? So I didn't get skunked, but I was about ready. I'm like, this is actually kind of fun, fishing this river, even though I'm doing nothing. Trying everything in the box. Wish we would have stopped at the fly shop in Sheridan. There's a couple of them there in Sheridan.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm like, well, I'm going to get skunked. This sucks. I had a whole year to do research. I loved it last year. And I'm going to get skunked. And then boom, boom, boom on like the last resort, size 14 nymph. So it wasn't how I wanted it to go down, but I don't know. That's how it went.
It's kind of funny how you say that. I kind of had a similar experience on the Truckee. You know, I haven't fished it for a couple of years. And the last time I did was with a good friend, Alex Ramirez. And he was gracious enough to show me a stretch of river that is just sexy. I mean, like, the rocks, the pools, the flows were a little off this time, but anyways, the family had made plans to go up to Idaho for the summer for 10 days. Well, that got nixed with all the COVID stuff, and so we audibled to go up to Tahoe, North Shore, Tahoe City, and so I asked the wife if I could bring a rod. She's like, yeah, of course. So snuck out a morning and only had 4 hours or so to fish, and my brother-in-law was with me, and he's just getting started fly fishing, so getting him squared away, casting and everything, and roll up to the spot and just see this massive brown just annihilate something that was just sitting on the surface. Couldn't quite see it. I don't want to make up a story or anything, but just like, you just see that splash, you hear the splash, and it's big. You're like, oh, okay, we're staying here, all right. So kind of back off a little bit. And then the progression starts. Like, you see the midges coming off. You're like, okay, those are small. And then you see them get a little bigger. Now the blue olives are coming off. And then throughout our time in this stretch of river, it was just like a bug paradise. Like, you had PMDs coming off, and then you had the caddis coming off, and then green drakes coming off, which is like,
everything,
dude, super nice. Yeah. And then to end the day, there's yellow sallies. And so I was just like, dude, take your pick. And so trying to keep up with the progression of all these different bugs coming off was fun. And it actually, brought me back to the days where I was like, I was fishing for trout exclusively. And that's kind of that game that I truly enjoyed figuring out, what makes these fish tick.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I didn't get anything to hand that day because just keeping up with everything was tough. And so I told the wife, I was like, hey, I'm going back tomorrow. Like, give me like 2 hours. Like, I'll be okay. And sure enough, came back that next day. And when the midges were coming off, fishing the blue olive and mergers. And so trying to stay ahead of the game that way. And the brother-in-law and I got kind of lucky and hooked a few. Weren't crazy big, weren't the ones that we saw, but had a good time and a great experience. So
yeah,
I definitely missed the Truckee, but when you got a bass boat and the Delta is 30 minutes from your house, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was, when you live in an area, you can kind of get an idea of what's happening. When we've gone to the Yuba, we kind of know that squall thing might happen, and you kind of get used to the bugs and everything. So being in a new area, this is mid or almost late June now. And just with the snow melting, and what was the snowpack, and how did it melt out? Because Abby lives in Laramie, and so you might have a difference in the snowy range. Might have a different accumulation of snow versus the Bighorns. You have these separate little mountain ranges here in Wyoming, rather than just the Sierra Nevada. So you can look at the Sierra snowpack. Okay, it's going to be high for a while, and then by rounding out into shape, you don't have any of that knowledge. And it's hard to look up a lot of that stuff. There's so much information, YouTube videos about the Truckee, the little Truckee, Mikey Weir with those videos of huge brown trout, man.
Yes.
I know when we were really getting into that, really getting started, it was, dude, and fishing streamers and all that, hopper droppers. it's weird. There just seems to be a bit of a void with that here in Wyoming, and it's nice, but at the same time, you kind of want that frame of reference, something to kind of get you going. We went to this lake, and a guy had posted a video of golden trout at this unnamed lake, and he showed on his YouTube video, he showed a little like where it was, and okay, man, we're going to this lake, and it's this unnamed lake between this lake and this lake. And so we got there, and my first cast out, and I just see this fish slowly from under the rocks, just perfectly clear water, and like, oh my gosh, here it comes. And it just took it so slowly, and I was patient. Sometimes you just set before it gets there.
Just rip it.
Saw it take, and then brought it in. I'm like, dude, that looks a lot like a cutthroat. And we were catching these beautiful cutthroats. I'm like, dude, I don't think that's a golden. And they weren't. They were Yellowstone cutthroat. I'd never caught a Yellowstone cutthroat before, but I wonder what happened. Like, did this guy kill all the goldens? One of the pictures that he had, he'd taken the golden out and he'd set it on some rocks for pictures. And I thought, oh, gosh, man, that thing might be clubbing its head to death.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were clearly goldens that he was catching. So I don't know if they're both in there, or if that was 6-7 years ago and they restock it with cutthroats, or what happened there. But yeah, not much frame of reference. Do you go online and do you look at YouTube videos or look for content about these new places that you fish, or do you just go out there and try to figure it out yourself?
Absolutely. In the bass world, I mean, knowledge is definitely power. Just keeping up with everything, especially on the Delta, being a tidal estuary, and then you got moon phases, and then you got weather coming in and out, and you got different seasons of the spawn and their feeding habits and everything, and it's just overwhelming. It's a lot different than trout fishing for sure. And so any bit of information that you can get is gold. Like, I mean, it saves you so much time on the water. But on the other hand, going and exploring and just trying something, just throwing a Hail Mary up, is part of the fun and part of the adventure and part of what keeps you going out there.
Do you wish there was less content out there? Like, part of me is like, yeah, it's kind of nice that there's not a lot of stuff about Wyoming, so I can figure it out. Do you wish that there wasn't as much out there? That way,
you know what? I was actually thinking about that. Like, it's super subjective, I think, because it's like you're only seeing stuff that people want you to see.
Yeah.
So it's like, I love seeing the big fish stuff. I love, now we're all in the keep them wet, keep them, catch and release stuff. But I think there's that line you cross of needing to take a picture with the fish for the ego, for the Instagram, for the Facebook.
Yeah.
And so I could totally see both sides. I could see, yes, like, let's get more content out there. Let's educate people and protect our fisheries because of that. On the other hand, I could also see the argument to keep everything hush-hush to protect the fish, because if someone catches a giant fish, whether it be a trout, bass, striper, whatever, they're going to want to keep it out of the water and take a picture with it and maybe not fully have the fish's health in mind when they're doing that,
Yeah. Yeah. What was one case in which you caught a fish that you hadn't seen advertised? And then on the flip side, what was the case where you went to this spot because of what was advertised?
Ooh. So in the Delta, we have a variety of panfish. And there was this one spot that my friend Mike and I were fishing, and we were out there just to catch bass and have fun. And I caught this fish, and it looked like a crappie in the water. I was like, oh, this is cool. And brought it in, and it was a warmouth. It's like a cross between a bass, a bluegill, and it's just pretty colors. I'll send you a picture of it. Like, it's like chartreuse and blue and olive. It's just a beautiful fish. It's like a bluegill size, but it has like a bass mouth.
Huh. Interesting.
Super cool. Never seen a picture of one in the Delta before. Never seen a YouTube video posted of them being caught. On the flip side, the second question, I think the pursuit of a giant golden is something that is super special. And you see pictures of them, whether they're laid out on some rocks or on a float tube or something. And that is something that I have just swung and whiffed at.
Yeah.
Like the smaller fish are super cool. And I am so thankful that I've been fortunate enough to fish some creeks and some high altitude lakes and come tight with them. But those 20-inch goldens, I just have no idea where these guys are catching them.
Yeah.
And your season, like you said, the snowpack is everything. There's of course a snowpack report, but I mean, that doesn't relate to the runoff or the heat or the other conditions that come into the factor getting on these fish. So yeah, for me, it's the warmouth and then the giant goldens.
Yeah.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
The expectation thing is interesting. When we went for the Goldens, when you took me to that spot, it was just a golden. And so the expectation was just a golden and just a tiny tiny trickle. It was like, someone had 2 garden hoses out and that was the stream, and laying down on that piece of granite and you have one cast. Did you have one cast?
Yep.
And you had to lay out most of the cast onto the rock and just have that was so awesome. So I got stoked for, a 6-inch fish because it was a native golden, man. Like that's awesome. It was so cool to get that. And then we went to that meadow and then got the brown brookie and the rainbow. Nothing broke 10 inches, but the expectation was just the chance to get these, fishing the one way. So much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the flip side, we know and we chased and we tried to get that fish out of the Truckee, that huge, 20, 22-inch brown trout, knowing that's in there. I caught some nice fish in there, some 16, 18-inch rainbows and browns, but just knowing you have like a 20, 22, 24-inch thing in there, I never got that, and so I had a lot of fun on the Truckee, but just knowing that there's that next level, I'm like, oh, dang it. It's tough.
It's hunting, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think as we evolve in our fly fishing career, if you want to call it, like you go through these progressions, and I think you finally get to that one where you just want that quality fish, whether it's for a picture or not. Like you just want that reassurance that you're able to outsmart an old, big, beautiful, fat fish, whether it be on a streamer, dry fly, whatever it is. I mean, and that's the thing, like learning kind of from Kelly Gallup's stuff. It's like, dude, you're hunting, man. Like, these fish aren't throughout the system. Like, they're living in a very particular spot in the river where they can get their caloric intake each and every day and not expend a whole bunch of energy. And so finding out those spots and those conditions where you have the optimum time to be able to come tight with one of those, and just the probability of it just happening is so low that when you finally do get it and you know what you have is super special.
Yeah.
And I think that's, unfortunately, some people who may get lucky in the beginning kind of take that for granted, you know?
Yeah.
For me, it was steelhead fishing, just getting lucky one day, coming back thinking it was easy. And then, hey, I caught 7 of you guys yesterday. What's going on?
Yeah. That's tough. That's funny. I was thinking about that yesterday when we were on the North Tongue. And inevitably, if you have that, it reminded me actually a lot of the Owens River. The foliage was a little bit different, but still that same sort of just going back and forth. And so you have these epic cut banks, and you're like, dude, it's like a foot underneath. Like, you just know that he is just in there hanging out. And unless you get something perfect, he's just waiting. He's just waiting. And which cut bank is it? You know, is there one under each one of decent size, or where is that huge one underneath there? And then how do you get him to come out? Is it to come out, you know, if he starts feeding in the evening, or is it morning, or is it just that, you know, he's going to try to get one huge meal? You know, if you were to get a streamer up underneath there perfectly, and that would be the meal for a couple hours or a day, how do you make that happen? But it's tough. It's tough knowing that what's out there. And I feel the Upper Sacramento River, not that we've tapped out, but we've got some good fish out of there. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And then there are rivers, you know, like the Truckee. Man, I got to go back. And
100%. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, when you think about what we're out there to do, like, we're out there to trick a fish that doesn't sleep, to my knowledge, right? It just eats and spawns. We're trying to trick them into eating a piece of metal.
Yeah.
Hanging off a piece of monofilament, fluorocarbon, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's just one of those things where all the conditions have to come into play. And obviously skill, knowledge, and ability is something, but I think it's just the fish has to be willing to feed.
Yeah. And there's a different element too when you're tying your own flies. Abby has gotten into fly tying, and so she was going through her box, and she said, I have a few more tricks up my sleeve. And it was just a little hot spot pheasant tail. She was all
awesome
about all the stuff that she tied. And then we go around a couple more corners, and then, it was about half hour later. She's like, yeah, I think I'm about ready to throw in the towel. I'm like, oh no. You just go from that optimistic, hey, okay, I got this, I got this, we're going to try it, and it's going to be, I'm going to get the fish on this, and I tied it myself, and you're fired up. And then you get to that point where, okay, it might be over. And I was pretty much at that point. We were about ready to leave. And she'd gone back to start walking back to the car. And that's when bird's nest. Why a bird's nest? I don't know. But, the 3 in the same pool took it. Like, man, you're that close to, failing, calling it a day. You know what? The fish won this time, but then it ends up being successful, and you remember it. But that whole tying your own fly thing adds a whole nother dimension to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't throw the Griffiths at him.
This is the stupidest thing. So we left her place, and I had 2 fly boxes, and I left one here because I didn't have enough room in my pack for the hike. It's 6 miles into this lake where we fished. But we drove there. Like, I could have just put the other box in the car. So when we hiked back out from that lake, got back to the car. I'm like, I didn't bring my other fly box. I packed everything that I needed, I thought. And I was in golden mode. I was in golden trout mode. So I had the car. Yep. And I had, whatever was going to be great for the goldens. And I totally forgot about the tongue, which the North Tongue is like one of my favorite rivers, but I just got tunnel vision. And so I didn't bring the other box. And in the other box had the Griffiths and a couple of elk or caddis and stuff. But yeah, it's stupid, ridiculous. Had a whole year to plan for it and just get psyched for it. but again, like I was looking for information about it, and it was hard to plan because there wasn't stuff published, and a lot of the fly shops around here don't publish that stuff. You have to go in there to get it, and that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know.
Absolutely.
It was fun. What's next on the list here? What's the plan?
So, like you said, I mean, we're almost into July now, and it's all for me evenings and mornings, just low light scenarios for chasing bass on top. Stripers are pretty much in the rivers exclusively, and which is awesome now because, like I said, got a good buddy Alex who has the sled, and so we hit the rivers with him, and he comes down, and we could hit the delta with the bass boat. So we got everything covered, it feels like, and now it's just putting the pieces together to come tight with one of these fish. These quality fish. So I mean, the last time we were out, we saw a 30-pounder come in.
Ooh.
In the shallow. I mean, it just takes your breath away. It's like one of those things where you do exactly what you just did. Like, all right, regroup, let's do this. So it's a fun time. I mean, it's, like I said, early mornings, late nights. But I mean, the fish are just angry for whatever reason. That first hour of light, that last hour of light, and I mean, they just come to the roof, just charged. So there's no waiting on that strip set, like you're talking about with that trout coming up. I mean, it's just engulfed.
Yeah.
So
do you think about everything comes back to the pandemic? It's crazy how there are a few things that can just totally make me not remember that's going on, like fishing. Like when you're out on the river, there's nothing else going on. And then you're like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, there's so much unrest. There's so much pain and suffering. But for the last couple hours, man, it was nowhere in the brain. I think I hate the term new normal, and I hate the term now more than ever. But dude, now more than ever, having a healthy habit, like you're outside, you're getting the vitamin D, you're doing something that makes you happy, you're taking your mind off the stress. I'm not advocating for more people to fly fish. But
maybe
man,
golfing.
Yes, something to get out, man. But it's crazy to see, and it's sad. There's so many people you hear them talk or you see them post, you're like, man, this person could really use a habit, a hobby, something to be healthy, because now it's just recreational anger, and it's pretty unhealthy. But
at times I almost feel guilty, like just being honest. I mean, it's like you have something like you said where you 100% escape.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about the outside world. You're thinking about catching a fish.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I think that's the cool part too, is as fishermen, we totally have power to bring other people in and show them how cool it could be. Yeah. And with that, you could share what brings you joy. And I think when someone has passion for something, it's contagious.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw that, this past week with my brother-in-law, like just getting amped, like telling him about the bugs coming off and stuff. And when we saw the green drakes coming off, like I started like having a seizure. I was just like, what? This is, and he's just like trying to keep up. And I remember being there, and he had so many great casts and throwing them in, and then just forgot to put the line underneath the trigger finger, and that was the one drift that got eaten, and I'm like, oh dude, I feel for you, man. But anyways, I think it's just that passion that could change people's lives, I think, in that moment.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because I think bringing new people out, or maybe not as skilled people out on the river or the lake or whatever, is kind of viewed as a hindrance, dead weight or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think when we kind of transform our mindset into thinking like, dude, we could actually positively impact someone's life in this moment, it's pretty cool. It's pretty deep.
Yeah. Well, as a fireman too, like, dude, you see that's a high stress at any moment. You got to be on. I know you talk about sometimes you're just kind of bored waiting for the call, but you're on.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
how difficult is it to kind of come down off that? And what are some of the first things? Obviously, you have to be a husband and then a father to young Hank.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, but how soon do you switch, and how easy is it for you to go from bass fishing Kurt from newly minted engineer?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Congratulations, engineer.
Thank you very much.
What's in there?
You know what? Fortunately enough, I work with a great group of guys that are super cool. We keep everything light, but we work super hard. But coming home, I have a 30-minute commute, so it's just enough time to kind of calm down. And one of the coolest things is I just been calling my dad a lot too and talking to him. And it's one of those things where he's in Arizona now, and so he's excited to one, hear about non-100-degree weather for a change, and two, just hearing about what we're doing. He's excited to hear about what we're fishing for and the group of people I'm hanging out with, and he's constantly asking about you guys and how everything's going and what your adventures are like and everything. And but I think coming down from working and switching that mindset over is coming home, opening the door, and like you said, you're being greeted by a super excited cattle dog that's ready to see you. And my wife, who is a school teacher, hasn't been to work for a couple months now and is now off for summer, and so she's always home. And so it's one of those things where a little bit of time in between talking to pops and then opening the door, it's kind of a nice little easy way into normalcy.
Yeah, I always felt that having something outside of your job is so important, because then you approach your job better. Like if your job is your life, what refuels you, what gets you back, and if there's nothing, then you're showing up and you're already kind of wasted when you get to work. And then if you're in a job in which people can and will be impacted daily, like you got to have the juice. And so you have to kind of be, it's selfish, but it also helps other people to take care of yourself. That way you can better help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be that balance.
And then it comes at the expense of fish with little holes in their mouths, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's right. A nice piercing.
Yes. Well, any closing thoughts, man? I'm sure we'll talk once we close down the old Zoom here. But what else you got for the old podcast?
Oh, I'm excited to be on again. Thank you very much for having me. I just think that maybe the listeners take someone out fishing that you normally wouldn't take fishing.
Just not to the best spot.
What's that?
Just not to the best spot, right?
Just not to the best spot. Yeah. Second best or third best.
Yeah. Make them earn.
No, I think that's awesome. I think that whole mindset deal is super powerful, and I think that we should share it with other people.
Cool. All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for having me.